What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be finishing up the swap on the V6 MR2. Where we left off last time was we had just done the first test drive. There was a check engine light on the car. My guess is that it was probably related to the MAF sensor. And the reason for that is instead of using the one that's recommended for this swap, I tried to cheap out and I just got a, cheap one at AutoZone. Actually, I was able to return that sensor and get all my money back. And I've ordered a new OEM one. It was shipped already. It's just the shipping company messed up. So it's not here yet, but I should hopefully have that within the next week so I can test fire the car, make sure all the check engine codes are gone, and then move forward. On that front, I'm feeling pretty good about things. I still have to address the oil leak. I'm not too concerned about it right now because the engine oil is still fully topped off and the transmission oil is still topped off as well. So that tells me that it's obviously a small leak and it's something that I will address. It's extremely cold right now. We're, in the heart of winter or during the middle of winter time right now, or here in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm probably going to end up doing that closer to March or sometime in March. My hope is that it's going to be just a little bit warmer because this shop is absolutely freezing. And as you can see, it's not insulated in any way, shape, or form. That's something I want to do. It's just at the very bottom of my priority list because I got a million things left to do on this property. Anyways, we're going to go on to the actual topic of today's video, and that is fixing the tachometer on this car. My tach actually broke before I even started doing the swap, and usually that just means that a capacitor is bad. So you just replace them. It's a pretty easy, simple fix. Because of the 2GR swap, in addition to replacing the capacitors, I'll also be replacing or adding some inline resistors as well. I've never done this repair before, but it honestly seems pretty straightforward. I think taking out the gauge cluster is gonna, be 15 minutes at the most. The part where I am a little bit nervous on is soldering in the new resistors. So they are right here. I bought the kit from Frankenstein Motor Works. You could buy this stuff separately for cheaper. Honestly, it's 10 bucks. It's worth it. Makes it nice and convenient. So I do have a solder kit. Shout out to my brother because he gave me this years ago. The thing is though, I really have very little experience soldering anything. I mean, the last time I think I did something, it had to have been like, I don't know, 10 plus years ago. If there's anywhere I think I'd mess up, it'd be the actual soldering portion. But other than that, I think it should be straightforward. To remove the cluster, all we have to do is remove all the trim that's around it. So there's this piece right here. There's the radio trim. I think there's a little piece up here as well. It's been a while, but yeah, I think there's a piece up here that we'll have to remove. That's gonna expose the gauge there. And then there's just a couple screws that we undo. I think the only part where, it might be a bit of a struggle is that as I pull the cluster out, there's gonna be some clips that you have to undo. If this was a 91, 92 car that had the mechanical speedos, I heard it can be a bit more of a pain, but on the electronic speedos like this car is, should be pretty easy. The cluster's out. Overall, this went pretty smooth. I think the most challenging part was actually removing this trim piece. This is the piece that goes like right above the cluster, something like this. And anyways, the only challenging part, or the reason why I felt it was so challenging, is that I was trying to be careful to not scratch the face of the cluster. And that was pretty much it. It's only held in place by these two clips, and then there is a bolt on this side and a bolt on that side. But other than that, this came out super easy. So we're gonna be able to disassemble this now. The cluster is disassembled. In order to make sure that this stuff doesn't get like scratched up or damaged or anything like that, I put it on the back side of the other MR2 just so it's away from the work area and minimizes the chance of damaging it. Anyways, getting back to that tachometer, and this is where we run into some issues. So on the back side here, I don't know if it'll show up on camera too well. There's actually some damage in this area. So in addition to a capacitor being bad like I suspected, I also have a bad resistor. Fortunately, I have a brother who knows this way better than I do, so I sent him a picture and he actually talked me through the process of how I could repair it and then double check that everything still works. The tach can likely be fixed. The only thing is I'm gonna be needing to buy an additional resistor or one with the correct value. And unfortunately, I can't get that locally, so I'm just gonna order it online. The thing is, that means I'm probably gonna be waiting, let's just say like a week for that. And because I already have other things on the docket to get done, that means having or getting the tachometer working in the car would probably be pushed back to like mid to late February, and my preference is to get it done as soon as possible. So I essentially have two choices. Option number one is that I could just put everything back together, call it a day, order the part, and then just revisit this in a couple weeks. Option two, I could steal parts from the other V6 MR2. I've had this car for, gosh, I think since 2019, so that's going on 6 years this coming May. And in all the time that I've had it, it's actually never had a working OEM tachometer. I've always had this aftermarket unit right here. So my thought's actually pretty simple. I can just steal the tach from this car, and as long as everything looks good, I can go ahead and do the modifications and just throw it in that other car. So we're gonna give that a shot. You guys just saw me taking the gauge cluster out of that other car, so I don't really want to repeat that off camera. I'll steal it out of this car, and if everything looks good, we'll move forward with the modification. Well, I think we got pretty lucky, and we're gonna be able to move forward today. This is the cluster that's out of the hardtop MR2, the one with the 2GR. And then we have this bad boy. There's no damage or anything like that. Actually, if you look underneath, the capacitors are still fine. Nothing wrong with the resistors. I think we're gonna be pretty good in just going ahead and soldering in the new capacitors, the resistors that come with the kit over there, and then throwing this in there and putting it back in the hardtop MR2. I have my soldering iron set up. Again, huge shout out to my brother because he gave me that some years back. I really haven't used it, but it's coming in handy today and probably will a lot more in the future, especially as I have projects coming up on the other MR2 as well. So yeah, don't really have much experience with soldering, but I watched a couple videos. It seems easy enough, especially watching Frankenstein Motor Works video. All right, guys, the first capacitor's out. You'll notice that on the bottom one, I used this wick, or I guess desoldering braid, to get the solder out. On the top one, I used whatever this is. I guess it's a solder sucker or something like that. And the reason why I did that is that I obviously put way too much solder here. My concern was that it was going to overflow into these other areas, and obviously I don't want that. That's why I changed my approach, but honestly, this is just a learning curve. Again, I haven't done this in years. Yeah, it's just trying to figure out how long do I hold it, the heat, the characteristics, and now we're going to go put that second capacitor in. I do know there's a specific way to do it because there's a negative side and a positive side. So if I recall correctly, I think the negative side goes this way, the positive's that way. I just went to the Frankenstein Motor Work website to make sure that I had it right, and I did have it correct. This side is the negative, and then on the other one, that's the negative as well. So I'm good to go there. It doesn't matter which capacitor you use because from my understanding, they're both the same. Okay guys, that's the first capacitor in. The direction's correct. So overall, not too bad. It's honestly just gonna take a lot more practice with soldering to kind of get this down because they're not the prettiest things, or, you know, my hand wasn't the smoothest or steadiest, but again, that's gonna be seriously just a situation of practicing more. So we'll go ahead and get this second one knocked out. The second capacitor is in, but it's not soldered. I realized that I forgot to, well, turn on the camera. That's not too big of a deal though. The big thing is, again, it's in the correct orientation. I bent those little guys up here, the little legs, just so they kind of hold in place. And I'll put just the dab of solder. I'm hoping that this one comes out a little bit better than that one. And they are in. So at this point, all we have to do is add the resistors in line. So there's one right there. So I got to refer back to the Frankenstein Motor Works PDF that he has on his website. And you can see that the value correlates with the lines. I got these three lined up. Regardless of whether or not you're NA or turbo, you'll end up using the 50K one. And that one, oops, let me put these back where they go. This one goes right here on this side, and then depending on if you're NA or turbo, my car is an NA chassis. I should clarify that this V6 MR2 is an NA chassis, and so is the other MR2. It doesn't make a difference in my situation. Since it's an NA chassis, I'll use this one. I'll make sure to link to the PDF or the Frankenstein Motor Works website because he has the PDF on there, so you can look it up yourself if you're going to do this. this in theory should now be a working tack for the 2GR swap. So I'm gonna go ahead, throw this all back together, and then I'm gonna throw it back in the car, not fully assemble everything, but just get the gauge cluster in the car and see if this works. I threw the cluster back in the car just for the purposes of test firing this up, seeing if it works. Car's in neutral. Will it at least... Oh, shit! And it starts! I mean, it's obviously running rough. There's a check engine light, but the tack works now! Oh, my neighbors probably hate me. I do that at least once a week. All right, guys. So we have a working tack in this car now. That's pretty freaking sweet. Well, I think it's fair to say that the 2GR swap on this car is officially done. I mean, I've done all the major things, and right now it's just really working out the little bugs that are gonna happen with any swap. Map sensor, really hoping that's here within the next week or so. And then the oil leak, I'll address that sometime in March when it's a little bit warmer. Other than that, I'm just gonna be getting some miles on the car, and the goal is still to hit do the first track day with this car April 8th over at Oregon Raceway Park. So that should be a really fun one. But also it's like full circle, because the first track day that I ever did was at ORP in this car. That track day went really, really well. The last time I was there in this MR2, I actually overheated the engine, which somehow the car still ran afterwards, but I definitely hurt the engine. Anyways, it's been a lot of money and work to get the car to this point, but it's been worth every penny. And we're still not close to done, because this car is eventually going to get painted. I first want to do that one. That's going to be my practice car, because, well, the chassis is junk, so if I mess it up, it's not a big deal, versus this chassis that's actually pretty clean. Overall, I'm pretty excited for the things to come. I think that's everything I have for this video, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.